I'm really so lucky. I can't imagine life without him. He has boundless energy. He must always be up and doing. We've had a marvellous life together. I'm very, very lucky. It's about being in love, isn't it?
A man caresses a woman who lets herself be caressed. The twofold nature of the gesture as one that takes place between two persons thrills through the depth of enjoyment in his heart and stirs it. If he does not deafen his heart, he will have not to renounce the enjoyment, but to love. Isn't that wonderful?
If I give to Pearl, then I'm receiving the same. I get as much pleasure as she does.
It's always been that way.
What you're really asking, what is love? You can't separate the bits there. Love making as a purely bodily physical thing of an insertion of the penis into a female's vagina is well, part of the whole thing. But you can't separate it. You can't say that is love.
People find it very hard to express because often there aren't words for the things that touch us most deeply. Words sound trite or ridiculous.
Let's come on ridiculous things like a few days ago. Do you remember I commented that I had a strange sort of pleasure when I saw you going out of the front gate in the pouring rain, pulling the hood over your head. I mean, that's just bloody silly, really. But why should I feel like that with a person I've been living with for 50 years? But it exists, and you can't analyze it really. It's unanalyzable. Except as a statement of the various strange ways that it shows itself. Mm-hmm. And coming back to sexual intercourse, that is one of the major ways of demonstrating, you used the word demonstration, of demonstrating it.
I suppose if you're exchanging pleasure in that intense way, it's creating a permanent bond.
I've got a different way of looking at it, perhaps. What I find is that it gives you a nice feeling to know that you're still wanted and are desirable, because when you're a young girl and your figure is there and you know darn well you look good enough, but when you get older and it gets a bit flabby and you've got more than you had before, you do wonder whether you're just as appealing. But Frank doesn't notice that. He said, I always say, well, you've got more to cuddle, dear. But the thing is, I think that is rather nice to know that you're still wanted and needed, and you want to give. And
yeah,
it's a nice feeling.
Supposing I do notice it, but it doesn't matter.
Ah, well, there you are. You don't tell me that, though, you see.
No,
so
well,
therefore...
I'm telling you now.
Oh, yes, well, you're telling me now, yes.
I mean,
well, of course you would
I
notice
notice
it.
what you're like, and I know what your measurements are, vaguely, and what size you
take. I don't
take.
think you do. I wouldn't tell you.
Every time we go shopping, we go up a size.
Yes, I don't tell you what size garments I have now, but no, to me that I think is how I feel. That it's nice to know that you still need each other and want each other, and are happy to be still able to fulfil the pleasures. Rather nice. I think we're very, very lucky and fortunate.
It's something you can't possibly prepare yourself for. You can't really imagine what it's going to be like. And one of the main things, I think, is coming home to an empty house. And often it's full of ghosts.
On the face of it, people might have thought that I was getting over it quite quickly, that they didn't know me very well, because I wasn't. I was coping with my life and determined that I wanted to cope with my life, but I was coping with it on my own, and I was very grief-stricken, very sad.
Everything you experience while your wife is alive, wherever you are in the world, if you have a good rapport, then you are sharing it with her unconsciously. So when I get back home, I'll tell her about that. And then when she's not there, there's this great black silence and emptiness on one side of your life.
And then, of course, that physical presence, when you've spent years and years with somebody and sleeping together, the touching, the physical sensation of another body, and it's not there anymore. And the old habits of being together. And the way you touch and hold and are together. And I think that's something old people miss very much, the physical presence, the touching. To most people it seems totally unnecessary to touch or hug perhaps a physically repulsive old person.
We all of us, I think, feel young inside. You'll always hear a woman talk about, isn't it awful, I still feel 20 or 30 inside, you know, a good year in your life. You still feel like that, and then you catch a glimpse of yourself in a shop window or a mirror. And it's a real shock, because there you are, young, trapped in a wrinkled, sagging old body, you know, and it's an awful shock. And it frightens you off being with other people. You immediately feel, how could I possibly have another relationship? Who could possibly like this body of mine?
How can you say one day you're 59 and the next day you're 60 and everything's going to change overnight? It doesn't. Nothing changes whatsoever. I don't feel any different now about my sex life than I did when I was 20 or even when I was 15.
Now, a lot of people give up sex. They say, oh, I'm over 50. We don't do that anymore. Well, I've never heard so much rubbish in my life. They've every reason to do it, and they should do it. Sex is an art that should be enjoyed from puberty to death. I think that's one of the things, a state of mind.
There was a young man with whom I worked, and he started asking me to go out. Well, he did ask me to go out with him for a drink on lunchtime. And I thought, well, why not? And we got on well, and we went back to the office. He was in a different department. And then he asked me again, and I was sitting quite close to him, and I thought, oh, this is rather nice. I felt a feeling of something going through me.
You know you're disintegrating, you're aging. You look at yourself in a mirror and you look at your body and your face and you think, God, this awful old hag, how dreadful. And if you can see yourself or feel yourself as an object of desire, it revives the old feelings. The feelings are still there. And if you have an actual person confirming that, which can happen in any age, you know, I don't know what people see in each other, but they find something. It's a kind of chemistry that can happen at any age. And so it confirms your feeling of yourself as a whole person.
I thought, I think he's quite young. And I was in the personnel department, so had access to the files. And I looked at his and I shut the door quickly. He was even younger than I thought. But I thought to myself, well, you know, why not? Might as well have a young man as a very old one, or even one my age. So it didn't seem to make any difference. And when I look back to that time, I have a really nice feeling for that guy, because he brought such a lot to my life at that time.
But you have to remember that women of my generation and older than myself just had no language of sex. We had no understanding about our own bodies even. Certainly not the parts of the body. And for many a woman at that time, I mean, they had no idea of orgasm. The word orgasm never came out till about 1968, did it, for us, you know? And for instance, when I first got married, I remember my husband saying to me, just relax, darling, relax. Because I was all uptight, wondering when was it going to happen for me, you know. I had no idea what was to happen, but I was waiting for it. But for most women of my age who have talked to me about it since, they really didn't enjoy sex, and after a little while they gave up the hope of it. It just wasn't for them. They thought they were just there for their husbands. And the old phrase about bearing it for England, you know, look up at the ceiling and etc., was very apt for them.
This is not always the case. Some people are married and they enjoy sex till they fall off their perches. And they're very lucky, because it's not to do with them personally, it's how it happens. And people that can live together for 40-odd years or 50 years and still enjoy sex are very fortunate. And I repeat that because it's very important. They are very fortunate.
I look at this one and find her remarkably attractive and very, very exciting sexually. Maybe other elderly gentlemen like myself look upon their wives and don't quite feel like that. I don't know.
You see, I mean, looking at Frank, who would think that he... Well, I'm not demeaning you,
Well,
darling.
you're not making love to Chipperfields,
No,
are
I
you?
know, darling, but... Well, some women fantasise. I don't have any. I don't need to fantasise. I've got it there. He's a good lover.
I can get a great deal of excitement through, I think, stroking your knee occasionally. It's a very nice knee. And as for your bottom, that's a glorious thing to stroke, but we won't go into too much detail there, else we might excite the audience too much.
Let's put it this way, dear. It's like an old car, dear. If you keep the old engine going and the more you use her, then she keeps running. I'm always afraid that if I don't, I might stop and never be able to start again, perhaps. I don't know, but I think it's like a good...
if you want to keep it, use it.
That's right, exactly. There you are.
You could do without sex?
Me?
Yes.
No. What a question.
Well, that's a straightforward answer, isn't it?
There's an old saying, there's many a good tune played on an old fiddle. And it is true. Many a good tune played on an old fiddle. So, again, it reverts back to the state of mind. And as most things do in this life, if you think about it. Most things are about a state of mind.
We've never had any inhibitions on what we do with each other. I don't think, have we?
No, I don't think so.
One point I didn't mention, or you didn't mention, was the fact that in most of your days you would consistently only get one orgasm, but now you can often get two. How about that for a point for old age?
Perhaps they're not such extreme ones, you see. Yes.
I can guarantee that they're just as good as they were, each one.
How do you know?
Which
You
one
said
was it?
I'm the only person that can be talking and have an orgasm at the same time.
Oh, yeah. Well, this friend had a divided room. She's the bedroom
flat
was
she
the
had,
bedroom
didn't
had a screen across, but it didn't reach the ceiling. And
Spare room, that was.
It made a little spare room, you see. Well, we was on the other side of this, and she was on her side. So Pearl and her were talking over the top of this screen, and we were enjoying our little sex session, and Pearl was talking to her all the way through actually having an orgasm.
No idea what was. Well, there's always been one there. I don't know. She doesn't know. Well, she's dead now, bless her. But she never did know. But
When I was a young soldier, I used to suffer from early ejaculation. As I got older, it got better. But it was never as good as I am now. By God, I can go on for ages. And I give many a lady who I'm with, they get innumerable delights by the time that it takes me to get to that state. And if it gets well known that this is how it happens, you'll become rather popular in the community.
It's great for me having this younger man as my lover, but then I think it's great for him to have me as well, so it cuts both ways. And it just works out exceedingly well. And it's quite exciting.
Oh, there's a story I must tell of Maggie Kuhn, the American woman who first brought the Grey Panthers into being. And in her autobiography, she talks about the time when she was 70, and she took a lover of a young student of 20, and how she was nearly drummed out of the Brownies for that. But she said it was a really cherished experience. And she said that older women had a lot to offer younger men, that one of the things she felt they could offer was their burgeoning sexuality could be helped along by an older woman because they didn't have to worry about performance. And I thought that was a useful tip. Not that I'm thinking of getting a 20-year-old, but still. Well, who knows?
It's very exciting. And when he met me from the plane at the airport, Fiumicino Airport, last week, he said, "Oh, Kate, you look younger than ever." So I thought, oh, great, that sounds as though we're going to have a good time.
And my great delight is to give pleasure. I make a point of it. I go into a long foreplay, and when we come to the sexual act, I give great pleasure. But I make a point of doing it. It is an art, but it has to be practiced. And I find with more practice, you get better and better at it. And I'm probably better today than I've been all my life.
It's a great improvement. We can go on for hours now, whereas when we were first married, it would all be over in 5 minutes. Or if you're lucky, you would extend it for 10 minutes, perhaps, but not very often. But now, I mean, it can it can go on for a very long time. I mean, time is infinite, so it's time when we begin to feel we want breakfast, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. But I think really, when you're younger, you want to reach orgasm. Now, it doesn't really, if you don't, it doesn't really matter.
I mean, there was one time, to be honest, I mean, they only got to look at you and you'd have an erection or just put your hand there. But, I mean, as you get older, it does take longer. I have to work
you have to.
more.
Well, yes,
Caress
that's
you
one
more
of the
and-
differences. I don't know whether
Yes.
this applies to other people, but when you're younger, it's usually the man that does the initiating and the touching up and gets the woman aroused. Now it's the other way round. The first thing that happens in the morning is Pearl will start on me and get me physically aroused, and then we can make start, you see.
The quality of an orgasm does depreciate as you get older. There's no getting away from it. I'm not trying to tell you any different. It is so. And it's become that it's not the be-all and end-all. It's sort of part of a procedure. As when you're younger, it's the beginning, the end, and the middle. It's the lot. But as you get older, it isn't. It's part of a parcel. But it's not the great crescendo as it used to be. And, well, between you and me, I'm beginning to prefer it this way than the other way.
This elderly gentleman came into our centre, and sometimes my colleagues, if they thought it was going to be a bit tricky, they'd say, "OK, can you come down, or can we bring someone?" Put the head round the office door and say, "There's an elderly gentleman here. We don't quite know what he wants, but can you see him?" "Oh, yeah, send him up." And so he wanted a book. He leaned over and he said to me, "On a Sunday afternoon, my wife and I go to bed." He said, "After our lunch, we go to bed and we spend 2 or 3 hours together." And he said, "I thought I would just like to bring something else into it." Well, I nearly gave him the book. I didn't feel as I should take any money from him. I think I did, because they were not my books. But that really made my day. I thought, oh, great that this fellow has had the courage to come into our centre, because it was in the main street, and was able to talk to me about that. And I say I probably gave him a cuddle. I'm a bit free with my cuddles, and said to him, "What a lucky wife you've got. What a great relationship."
If you are attending to the other person's reactions, you can discover what is best and what is not so good. And to find out what gives the most pleasure, it's very easy, because you're observing, you're concentrating on this other person, and that at the time, that's your whole world, really.
Certainly there was a period I went through when I wished there was something else I knew, and yet still couldn't quite say to my husband. Now I think I could say that, and I would expect my partner to say that too, without fear of the other person saying, "Oh, bugger that for a lark," you know. Much more to be open and say, "Well, why don't we try," you know.
I think it is quite difficult for people to come together. I've found it difficult at times, because I think it's quite nice to have a bit of modesty. I think that's quite a come-on in many ways. But, yes, some people do find it difficult. And isn't it strange that couples who have been married a lot of years would find that a difficulty? But they're there. Oh, I'm absolutely sure that they are there. And if they could only perhaps treat themselves, well, it's not a treat these days, is it? But have a cosy evening with a glass of wine and let your hair down, they might end up in on the rug in front of a nice log fire. I have done that once or twice.
People who try to behave as is the right way to behave in the circumstances. I think I'm in bed with my husband or whatever, and we ought to be having great orgasms. And then there's pretense and all kinds of falsity creeps in, instead of accepting the rhythms of the body and the rhythms of oneself, and admitting to how one's feeling or not feeling. Total trust. And then the physical flowering will occur in its own time and its own way, instead of being forced by expectation.
Reich has written about that, you know, the difference between real orgasm and orgasm that isn't really deep or genuine. It's just the relief of tumescence, which is certainly a relief and a pleasure. But then so is emptying your bowels. And I think there's a tremendous lot to be done in educating people to be open and, to love their own bodies, to realize the possibilities of bodies, because that's what happens in old age, you know, when an old man doesn't get an erection, but they can still carry on the tenderness and the affection and the touching. And this is, people don't think old people need that.
We both learnt through our previous partners and life generally that isn't what it's all about. So there's no harm done if we get a cuddle and a little giggle together, rather than having to, was that all right for you, dear? Did the earth move, etc.?
It ties in really with, doesn't it, with the importance of sex and how whether I feel it's any different now from when I was younger. And the difference is that the physical act is the same, and it's lovely. But what I appreciate more really is now is the warmth of feeling, the sympathy of lying with somebody all night, and the importance of cuddling. I mean, I didn't realise that when I was young, and I wasn't able to give, I think, the love that I ought to have been able to do, because I didn't understand how important this was.
You see, nearness and sex are two different things. All through our life we need nearness from our mothers when we were very young, and from our partners when we were very old. And it's that nearness that is confused with sex. If we're near, we must be having sex, not necessarily. But as people get mature, the nearness may be more important than the sex. The sex will come in from time to time, but the essential thing is the nearness. One American said that we should all be more psychologically sane if we had one good cuddle every day.
I say to him sometimes, got a lot to do in the morning, so
Not
you
coming
won't
back
mind,
to- not
darling.
coming back to bed.
Not coming back to bed, because I know if I come back to bed, it's fatal. That's it, you see. So, but invariably, I'm
get-
busy, and then I think,
You get
oh,
in
I
5
don't know.
minutes.
Yeah, I think, oh no, it doesn't seem right. No, I've got to go back and have a little cuddle. So I'll nip back in and say, I can only have 5 minutes, dear. It goes on longer, but it's just, but oh, well, he's happy with that. He says, I don't mind. But he manages to persuade it to be
You're
a little bit
happy
long.
too.
Oh, yes, of course. But it's just that it's a nice way to start the day. I just feel that it's right.
I've had I got nighttime epilepsy that started, and I think it was the medication which prevented that, which it succeeded in that reasonably well. I still do occasionally get a fit at night, but not so much. And I think that may well have started it. And so I was suffering from, again, I don't like the word impotence. Impotence means what the word itself, impotence, lack of power. There's no lack of power, and there's no lack of a desire, well, to put it bluntly, a lack of a desire for sexual intercourse with Joan. It's an erectile dysfunction. It just means that he won't come up when he's excited.
and I become impotent. Not a state that I fancied at all, I must assure you. And I found one of the biggest difficulties was not the actual lack of sexual activity so much as walking down the street, seeing a very admirable young lady and thinking to myself, oh, I could just do with that. Then all at once a little voice said into my brain, but you couldn't do anything about it. And I went down, down and down into the depths. I was in the rubble, in the mud. You couldn't get any further down, and it is a terrible experience to find that you're impotent.
I discovered that things were not easy. It wasn't easy to make love because not having made love for 10 years, the mouth of the vagina sort of seizes up. I mean, it's rather like an engine seizing up.
Well, when the problem first struck me, I didn't know how to deal with it. And as I think I mentioned probably to you, and I have mentioned it to other people, the first thing I did was go to a sex shop, which of course had nothing to offer at all of any use whatsoever.
The medics were of no help at all, the local medics. It was beyond their ken. They just said, well, you're getting on, you're 58, you probably fail it. I said, rubbish.
If you haven't got regular sex, if you still got this urge and this libido, the important thing is to keep yourself working, and you can do that by massaging yourself and stretching yourself and with the hormone creams, and it really does work.
I try to persuade every woman, certainly that's coming up to the menopause. I say, try HRT, it's marvellous. And they sort of dither about some of them, and oh, we don't like taking tablets. And I say, well, just go on them for a week or a fortnight, and you'll feel so marvellous that you'll stay on them.
I did explore at that time what ways there were of making the erection much surer and much bigger.
Sustaining it, really.
Sorry?
Sustaining.
Sustaining, that's the right word. And came across the Ericade, which I then started using, which must have been about 3 or 4 years ago, which we have used ever since. And not consistently, but we will sort of turn round and look at each other and say, well, I think we might make him a bit bigger, don't you? And so we do duly make him a bit bigger.
I made a few inquiries for older gentlemen, and I was given an address in Harley Street, and I went to see them. They're charming people. You couldn't wish to be in better hands. It was probably embarrassing to some people, but strange enough it wasn't embarrassing to me, because I knew what I wanted at the end of it. And I went through this medical examination. He said, oh, he says, we can fit you up, I think. Give you a few injections and you should be all right. And I recommend, that procedure. Any man who is impotent today, do not lose out on it, because it is the breath of life. You can't get beyond it.
Well, I like to think it's kept me looking younger. And I like to think that my hair's in good condition and my fingernails grow and they're in good condition. I've got lots of energy, and of course it gets rid of that dry vagina, so that's quite a good thing as well. But for me, it's been great. Now, I don't know how I would have been without it, and I don't intend to stop taking them to see how I'd be without it. So I can only say for me it's been great.
Here we are. Here's the device. It's relatively simple. A ring goes over the end. Can you see me there? Would you like to take that? Pop a ring over the end, like so. All this, let's get this clear initially, all this mechanicalness may seem very strange and very anti-romantic. But I can assure you, in the situation of creating a nice, big, healthy erection, it isn't. That we do this with quite a lot of joy on Joan's part. There we are, that's all set up. This goes over the penis, so. Pump away, so. Vacuum in there. And then as soon as the penis reaches a reasonable size, which is up to about there.
Depends on the penis.
Sorry?
It depends on the man.
Well, that's me. I mean, this is only mine. I'm only thinking about me. I haven't tried it on anybody else yet. As soon as the penis is fully extended, then just flick the ring over there, which holds the blood in the penis, which has been extracted by the vacuum that's in there, and there is your erection ready for use. I did try. I'm afraid this is an American-made one. I tried an English one, which wasn't nearly so good. This is...
I call this the Rolls-Royce one.
This is the Rolls-Royce of these devices. And I've had this now for, 4 years. And it's worked extraordinarily well. But the main point to even say again is this point that all this sounds highly unromantic, but it isn't. Once we've got used to the idea of doing these extraordinary things, it works out perfectly well. There we are.
There is no greater assurance at any time of life than real warmth from another person. And I just mean not genital exchange, but just warmth of closeness with closeness and flesh with flesh. There's nothing that is needed more as a consistent support and reassurance for all people.
We all human beings have the same feelings, and it doesn't matter in what country, what race, what income group. We all want to make contacts with other people. We all need to be loved, and we all want to love other people, and why not talk about it? And even if you can't speak, if you're paralyzed, you've still got all these feelings inside you. Gentleness, mutuality, eroticism, sensuality. You know, you don't become a different object because you're old.
He's psychic. Sometimes he says he hears me, and I come out of the lift as he's coming out of his room. And, well, of course, Zimmer frames rattle, and he probably hears the nurse who's brought me down talking to me. Other than that, I think he only thinks it's about time. He'll peep out of his door, and if he sees my chair and Zimmer there, well, then he'll come up and sit with me until we go down to breakfast. He's 88 and I'm 80. I've only really known him a year. We both came here about the same time. And we watch out for each other's interests. You know, we're very supportive of each other. When I can't get out of my chair immediately, I feel a hand coming in underneath my elbow and saying, "Get up," you know. That's the kind of thing. he does get crusty, but then he gets a bit crusty with everybody at times, and he is a man and he knows. There's no good saying that I make it 22 and if he said it's a quarter to, it's a quarter to, and that's that. That was lovely, wasn't it? Don't do that, you don't know who's watching. Put them back. Pardon?
I don't care.
Well, I do. Go on, put your teeth back.
And I know he doesn't. I do, yes.
Yes, good for you, Eddie. You be supportive of me, else I'll sack you.
You can come to the activities room this afternoon and we'll do some painting. Or make some cakes this afternoon. All right. I'll go see if I can find you another book, Major, a novel or an autobiography.
I want a novel. Travel.
It's nice to have a companion in a place like this. I've been alone since 1962, and Jack not quite as long as that, I don't think, about 11 or 12 years as far as I know. I think he's probably lost count of the time a bit.
Right for you, sweetheart.
But I can't do much for him at all, you see. I can be supportive, but I can't... I couldn't even sew a button on his shirt for him. You know, it's so silly. But there it is. I couldn't even make him a cup of tea.
Are there any activities you'd like to do?
Say again?
Are there any activities you'd like to do?
I can't think of any at all. I want to say I'm reasonably content just sitting here letting the hours go by. I don't think there are many hours going to go by before I disappear from this earth.
I don't think he'd like to be without me. He said to me one day, I might fall out with you, but I'll never leave you. And I thought that was rather nice. And he sort of says similar things to his daughter, but not much to me. We're just comfortable together.